there would not have been a day in my career that I don't feel like
What do Calvin Johnson, Sterling Sharp, Tony Baselli, and Tiki Barber all have in common with Patrick Willis? Well, all five of these players had tremendous careers in the NFL and perhaps worthy of Hall of Fame consideration, but yet injuries would play a large role in their decision to leave the game of football early in their careers. On top of that, none of the aforementioned players have yet been inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, while Tony Baselli has been named as a finalist 4 consecutive times, and with Calvin Johnson entering eligibility for the 2021 class, longevity is one of the key metrics voters look at when determining whether one has done enough to earn a bus alongside other greats in Canton. So when news broke out of nowhere that Patrick Willis had announced his retirement during a press conference, this came as a complete shock. This was a guy who was pretty much at the apex of his career and all of a sudden decides to leave the game. So as part of my new Hall of Fame or Not series, where we look at the careers of potential Hall of Famers and analyze whether or not they deserve to be enshrined in the holy grail of football, this is the 4th installment of this series, and so far, we've examined the careers of Calvin Johnson, Jared Allen, and DeMarcus Ware. So if you haven't yet, be sure to check out those videos after this one. Anyways guys, welcome to my channel, where I primarily make NFL content in the form of stories and analysis. So if you enjoy the NFL as much as I do and you're feeling my content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel, as this is one way you can help support me as a content creator. I really do enjoy making these videos, so if you have any suggestions, you could send me a tweet and I'll see what I can do there. Anyways, before we get back to the main story, let me know in the comment section if you think Patrick Willis is a Hall of Famer or not. Born in Brewston, Tennessee, in a small town with a population of just under 1,500 people, Patrick had a difficult childhood. He, alongside his 3 siblings, were raised by a single father in a pretty bad environment. They would be surrounded by poverty and had trouble making ends meet, and this is why Patrick, at the age of 10, began working full-time in cotton fields. Now, if this wasn't bad enough, at the age of 17, Patrick, along with his siblings, moved into his high school basketball coach's place because Patrick's father was an alcoholic and often turned increasingly violent towards his children. Anyways, kudos to the basketball coach who took these 4 children into his own home, as this couldn't have been an easy situation for him. This was a huge commitment, especially as these kids were still very young. While in high school, Willis was regarded as a 3-star recruit by Rivals.com and listed as the 60th best linebacker prospect in 2003. He attended Ole Miss and played for the Rebels from 2003 to 2006. While there, Patrick amassed a total of 355 career tackles with 33 tackles for loss and was named first team All-SEC in 2005 and 2006. On top of that, the linebacker was named SEC Defensive Player of the Year in 2006 and was awarded the Dip Buckus Award, given to the most outstanding linebacker in college football. With all that being said, Willis entered the 2007 NFL Draft projected as an early 2nd-round draft pick. However, while at the Combine, his draft stock shot up after an impressive display with a 4.56 40-yard dash, which was the fastest among linebackers. He also posted a 39-inch vertical and recorded 22 reps of the 225 bench press. All these measurables certainly impressed teams and scouts, as he was now touted to go near the top 10. And with the 11th overall pick in the 2007 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers selected Patrick Willis. In his rookie campaign, Patrick would have the chance to learn from arguably the greatest middle linebacker ever, as he was coached by current Hall of Famer Mike Singletary, and in his first game, he recorded 11 tackles, including 9 solo and a forced fumble, in a 20-17 win over division rivals, the Arizona Cardinals. In Week 14, he had another stellar performance when he led the defense to hold Adrian Peterson to a mere 3 rushing yards off of 14 carries. This was AP, who averaged 95 yards per game in his rookie season and who went on to win the Offensive Rookie of the Year award. And finally, in Week 16, Willis probably had his best game that year versus the Bucs when he recorded an incredible 20 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pass deflected in a 21-19 victory. By season's end, he led the NFL in tackles with 174 along with 4 sacks. And after all these impressive performances, the linebacker won Rookie of the Week honors a total of 4 times that season, a Pro Bowl nod, a first-team All-Pro selection, and capped it off with a Defensive Rookie of the Year award. In his sophomore season, Willis went on to score his first NFL touchdown on an 86-yard interception return against the Seahawks. He was 2nd in the league in tackles with 141 and was again selected to the Pro Bowl and 2nd-team All-Pro. At this point, it was evident that Patrick Willis was really special, as in his first 2 seasons, the dude was an absolute monster. He was absolutely everywhere, and at this point was largely recognized as one of the league's premier linebackers. In 2009, Willis continued producing and would again lead the league in tackles as he finished with 152, and after 3 seasons, he led the league twice in tackles. And the linebacker would again be selected to the Pro Bowl and first team All-Pro, and in the following offseason, the 49ers management offered their prized possession a new 5-year extension worth $50 million, making him the highest paid linebacker in the NFL. In the following season, Patrick would begin to see the first signs of wear and tear as his body began to give in after years and years of physical abuse playing in the middle. Although he played much of the season with injuries, in Week 17, it was the first time Patrick had ever missed a game in his career. However, he still managed to close out the season recording 128 tackles and 6 sacks, as well as making his 4th consecutive Pro Bowl and 3rd first-team All-Pro selection. Before the start of the 2011 campaign, on an ESPN poll, Patrick ran away from the field as the NFL's best linebacker and would get a ringing endorsement from linebacker and 12-time Pro Bowler Ray Lewis as he considered Patrick a worthy successor to his undisputed reign. Ray would go on to say, "I just love the way he plays the game. He plays the game with fire, and he reminds me of myself a lot." And these words were really big because from 2000 to 2010, Ray Lewis was considered the best middle linebacker in the game and arguably the greatest middle linebacker ever. Anyways, in this season, Patrick was part of a stingy 49ers defense which set an NFL single-season record of not allowing a rushing touchdown until Week 16. Now, let that sink in for a second. That season, the 49ers faced off against Beast Mode twice, Shady McCoy, Cedric Benson, Ray Rice, and Steven Jackson, just to name a few. The Niners finished with a 13-3 record as division leaders. However, in Week 13, Willis injured his hamstring and would go on to miss the last 3 games of the season. And for the 5th year in a row, he would once again make it to the Pro Bowl and was selected as a first-team All-Pro for the 4th time in 5 seasons. In the 2012 season, Patrick led the Niners to Super Bowl 47, where the linebacker recorded 10 tackles but lost by a score of 34-31 to the Baltimore Ravens. He would again be named a Pro Bowler and received his 5th and very last first-team All-Pro selection that season, as he amassed a total of 120 tackles along with 9 passes deflected. And over the course of the next 2 seasons, Patrick would again battle injuries with a fractured hand, groin, and toe injury. In his 8th season in the NFL in 2014, he only managed to play a total of 6 games, and on the following offseason, on March 10, 2015, the linebacker would announce his retirement from the game of football, citing that while he could have played longer, he did not want to jeopardize his future health like many others who went on to play until their bodies gave in.
My 7 years, 7.5, 8 years, whatever you want to call it, I feel like there would not have been a day in my career that I don't feel like that I gave this game everything I had.
Now, let's take a look at Patrick Willis' career stats and compare them to other linebackers in the post-2000 era. So when it was all said and done, after 8 seasons in the NFL, Patrick amassed a total of 950 tackles, 732 solo, 20.5 sacks, 53 passes deflected, 8 interceptions, and 16 forced fumbles with 5 recovered. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler with 5 first-team and 1 second-team All-Pro selection. Patrick also led the NFL in 2007 and 2009 and was also part of the NFL's 2010 All-Decade team. And lastly, he also has 1 Super Bowl appearance. This was all over an 8-year span, and it's safe to say that Patrick was regarded as one of the best in his position during his first 5 to 6 seasons. He really had no weaknesses in his game, and honestly, I just find it tragic that he left the game at the age of 30. I'm happy he made the decision to leave and think about his health, but sad in the sense that we couldn't see him play longer. With all that being said, let's take a look at those who played in a similar position to Patrick and eventually made it to Canton. With the most recent linebackers to be inducted in 2018, we had both Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher enshrined into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And while these two have played much longer than Patrick, their stats clearly reflect their longevity. On top of that, with Ray Lewis, he's a 2-time Super Bowl winner, along with 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, while Urlacher won his in the 2005 season. Personally, for me, the Defensive Player of the Year award is a huge honor, and with Patrick not having one on his resume, does somewhat hurt his chances. Next, let's take a look at Junior Seau, who played half of his career in the 90s and 2000s, and Derek Brooks, who while played as an outside linebacker in a 4-3 scheme, he was primarily a pass coverage and run-stopping linebacker by most accounts. Junior had a very long and successful career in the NFL with the Chargers, Dolphins, and Patriots, where he was a 12-time Pro Bowler, 8-time first-team All-Pro, NFL Defensive Player of the Year in '92, and also part of the 1990s All-Decade team. And with Brooks, he was an 11-time Pro Bowler, selected as a first-team All-Pro on 5 occasions, NFL Defensive Player of the Year in 2002, member of the 2000s All-Decade team, and lastly, a Super Bowl champion. Here, you can clearly see that the last 4 linebackers from Patrick's era all had longevity and a Defensive Player of the Year award to their name. Next, if we look at 2 other contemporaries from Patrick's era, I think Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly would be direct comparisons to the linebacker. Wagner is entering his 9th season in the NFL, and Kuechly, like Willis, retired from the game after only 8 seasons. The numbers for all 3 are pretty comparable along with their accolades. However, Kuechly was a Defensive Player of the Year in 2012, and Wagner was a Super Bowl champion. Next, let's take a look at Patrick Willis's peak. I don't think anyone here can argue Patrick was clearly a top 3 linebacker throughout his 8-year career and arguably the best middle linebacker early on in his NFL career. However, the last couple seasons, we saw a small decline. From an All-Pro to a Pro Bowler, this can be largely attributed to injuries or, like many others, simply getting older. He played in a grueling position, and like those before him, age kind of creeped up on him. Simply put, he put in the prime of his career and then stopped. There was no rapid decline into the twilight years of his career, like others. He played 8 seasons and that's it. 112 games, where the average modern-day Hall of Famer played 185 games. And while the argument can be made, what if Patrick left San Fran after those 8 years and played 5 average non-Pro Bowl seasons in Cleveland? Would we look at him any different? When we visit the Pro Football Reference Hall of Fame monitor for inside linebackers, this shows Patrick's Hall of Fame score at 106.63. The score takes a look into the players' total accomplishments throughout their career, including MVP, Defensive Player of the Year awards, First Team All-Pro and Pro Bowl selections, and Super Bowl titles. And in Patrick's case, his number is a little skewed as additional bonus score is given if a player has earned First Team All-Pro in over 33% of their seasons. And given that Patrick had a short career and did not enter the downstretch of his career like many others, has to be noted. Currently, the average Hall of Fame score for inside linebackers is 114. Anyways, this monitor does have to be taken with a grain of salt, but it's still a good indicator where he stands statistically with others. With all that being said, this was one of the hardest Hall of Fame decisions I've had to make in this series. When I went into making this video, in the back of my head, I always thought Patrick was a Hall of Famer. Didn't even think twice about it, but as I was making this video, it really got me to take a deeper look into his career and those before him. And honestly, I wavered back and forth with my decision. However, in the end, I simply just cannot deny the fact that for 5 to 6 seasons, Patrick was simply one of the best in his position. In his 8 years in the NFL, he accomplished so much, and to think that an additional 5 average seasons tackled onto his career would make him an unquestionable Hall of Famer got me to reassess his credentials. In the end, it's unfortunate his career ended the way it did, but for 8 seasons, Patrick gave fans so much to cheer for. He played the game of football with such passion and left everything on the field, and for him to want to walk away from the game with his health in check, I don't think it's something he should be penalized for. We've seen it time and time again, players suffering and battling from the physical and mental abuse from the game after retiring, and for Patrick to leave that all behind after all that he's given to this game should simply be honored and commended. Now, whether he actually gets in or not, I personally think the voters will make Patrick wait a long time. He wasn't even considered a finalist in his first year of eligibility in the 2020 class, and to be honest, voters probably have another linebacker ahead of him on the waiting list in Zach Thomas. But all in all, one thing is for sure, Patrick Willis is definitely a Hall of Famer in my books.